I'm Henny B, and welcome to the World War I Stories podcast, where history comes alive through the voices of those who lived it. Some scenes in these stories may be too graphic for sensitive listeners, so listener discretion is advised. Today's episode, The Wrong Front. He hated it here. He knew that hate was a strong word, but there was no other way to explain the disdain he felt for this assignment. Saying that he did not want to be here was an understatement. And it was not just the assignment that he despised. It was this place as a whole. It was dry and hot. The entire landscape was a hue of brown that he had never experienced back in England. Even the city, Johannesburg, was nothing like London. London had natural foliage and a temperate climate. They got rain. No such luck here. Over the past months, since he had been exiled to South Africa, that is what he called it, exiled, there had been major battles in places named the Somme and Verdun. He had no true idea where these places were, only that he should have been there and not here. Instead, Corporal Giles Bexley sat in this dirty shack overlooking the gold mine, watching, waiting. What was he watching for? What was he waiting for? God only knew, because he sure didn't. He assumed that he was watching for possible thievery, and with the parasites that were working the mine, he figured it was probably rampant, but not done overtly, so he had not noticed anything. Yet. Today he had brought a book to read. It was an American novel called The Red Badge of Courage. He had never read a novel by an American before, but this novel took place during their Civil War and seemed interesting to him. The more he read, the more he felt he could relate to the main character, young Henry Fleming. For he too wanted the glory of the battlefield, something that had, for now, been denied him. He had trained at the Aldershot military camp, a place known for turning recruits into disciplined soldiers. But discipline had always been a challenge for him. His temper had flared more than once, but it was the incident with Private Thompson that sealed his fate. Thompson had always been a braggart, constantly boasting about his family's connections and how he would surely be promoted quickly. One day, as he and the others were berating Thompson for something or other, he forgets exactly what it was about. He had pushed too far, and Thompson, in turn, lashed out, insulting his mother and sister. He didn't even have a sister, but Thompson didn't need to know that. In a fit of rage, Bexley had attacked him, beating him so severely that Thompson was hospitalized for weeks. Some officers wanted him court-martialed and sent to prison, but command felt that was too harsh, for Thompson lived through his injuries, although he was no longer fit to fight. Instead, they felt that he should serve in this barren part of the world where he could take his dangerous temper out on people the Crown could care less about. The real salt in the wound, however, was that command also decided South Africa would be a fine destination for the newly promoted Thompson. He couldn't fight anymore, but he could guard and he could still shoot straight. They saw fit to make him a major for it, while Bexley remained a mere corporal. Unacceptable, unthinkable, a disgrace. The sun sat high in the sky. Another hot, almost unbearable day. Bexley took a large drink of his canteen. Water spilled over his lips and onto his shirt. As he wiped his hands on his shirt, he noticed that two Afrikaners were looking at him from the mine entrance. "What are you two looking at?" he asked the two Afrikaners. Most people still called them Boers. Not Bexley. Boers sounded too dignified, and dignity was the last thing these people deserved. Dutch stock, sullen and stubborn, still thinking of their failed rebellion. They'd fought against Britain, against his king, not so long ago. He hadn't forgotten. He never would. He realized that they were looking at his canteen, his water. They must be thirsty, he thought to himself. He sneered at them, held the canteen out, turned it upside down, and dumped the contents onto the ground. The two men shook their heads and disappeared into the mine. "That's right," he yelled after them. "Get back to work." He leaned back in his chair, satisfied for the moment. From the left pocket of his beige tunic he pulled his timepiece. 1 o'clock. His relief should be along any second. As if on cue, a young private came up the walk. "Anything new?" the boy asked. Private Kramer, Bexley's closest friend here. Wiry and sharp-eyed, a Kent lad who had volunteered to fight but failed his marksmanship exam. Too weak for the trenches, so they stuck him here. A good guard, Bexley admitted, but a boy all the same. "Kramer, didn't know you were on this afternoon. I thought it was Fisher." Me either," Kramer said. "Thompson just sent me up here to relieve you. Anything to report?" Bexley's jaw tightened. Of course it was Thompson pulling the strings. It always was. Thompson knew that Kramer was his best mate here in Johannesburg. Now, who would he spend the evening with? "So much for poker night, eh?" "I guess, at least for tonight." Kramer had a pensive look. "Unless, of course, Thompson's changing my shift permanently." "Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that." With that, Bexley gave him a quick rundown of the happenings over the past 12 hours. It had been uneventful. He had searched men coming out of the mine at random, all but the blacks. He refused to touch them at all. Besides, they generally worked in their underwear. Where would they hide anything? They were disgusting creatures, to be sure. Then he walked the 3 miles back to the base, doing his best to ignore the rabble in the streets. At one point, a boy of 12 sent a scuffed soccer ball rolling his way. Bexley trapped it under his boot and glanced up. "Cheers, mister," the boy called, his voice carrying a British accent. Only then did Bexley smile, stoop, and send the ball back with a neat kick. He was tired, but he had one thing to do before he could sleep. He had to give his daily report to Thompson. He sat in the small, dimly lighted hallway just outside of Thompson's small office for 15 minutes before being invited in. He wondered if Thompson did this on purpose. "Anything to report, Bexley?" Thompson asked without looking up from the ledger he was currently reading. Gritting through his teeth, he answered, "No, sir." "Conducted random searches?" Thompson asked, still not looking up. 10 per hour as required, sir." Having to call this man sir left a sour taste in his mouth. Coward wouldn't even look at him. "Findings?" "Nothing, sir. Nothing at all." "Very good. You're excused. Go get some rest, soldier." "Thank you, sir. I will." He turned and left the office. He wished that Thompson would show emotion, that he would stop being so polite, so professional. It irked him that Thompson could be so nice, so forgiving after all that had happened. Gone was the boastful youth that annoyed him to a violent response, and in his place sat this pillar of politeness. It was really pathetic in Bexley's mind. Back in the small cabin that he shared with Kramer, he lay on his cot and started to read. It took 20 minutes until he was fast asleep. There were more black Africans working the mine today than Afrikaners. This was a rarity, Giles knew. As usual, every white man was wearing a light shirt and trousers, while all the blacks wore just their underwear. Except not all of them. There were 2 who were wearing clothing. This caused suspicion in Bexley's mind. He sat and read his book as the men worked and the hours passed. He kept glancing up, looking for the 2 clothed black men. This caused him to lose his place in the book. Had he already read that passage? Finally, he saw them. He took a visual inventory as they moved to leave the mine for the day. Something was different. He was having a hard time placing it. Then he noticed their pockets. There was a bulge in their pockets that was not there before. "They're stealing," he said under his breath, and he stood and made a dash in their direction. The 2 men were laughing, having told a joke in a language Bexley could not understand. With his weapon drawn, he stood in the path, right in their way. The two men stopped in their tracks, their smiles disappearing. These two men stopping also caused the entire line of men exiting the worksite to stop, as this was the only way out. The site was strictly controlled. He pointed at their pockets. "What's that?" The men, looking confused and not understanding what he was saying, looked down at the ground and around them, evidently not knowing what he was truly pointing at. He leveled his pistol at the two men, pulling back on the hammer. "What's in your pockets?" he asked with a snarl. The men raised their hands in a panic. They still did not understand what he was saying. A man behind them spoke up. "They speak only Zulu, sir. They don't speak the king's English." "Was I talking to you?" he said, shifting the pistol. "No, sir, but they cannot understand you. I can translate if you wish, sir." He thought about this for a moment. He was not sure if he could trust the man to translate accurately. These were all vile creatures, but it was all he had. "Okay, ask them what's in their pockets." The man spit out words very fast to the clothed gentleman, too fast for his liking. He found himself uneasy because the man was smiling, and the two men he was questioning looked like they were going to laugh. They spoke back and forth for just a few seconds, but that was all Bexley needed. He swung the pistol down onto the head of one of the clothed men and dropped on top of him, quickly subduing him while he was down. "What's so damn funny? Is stealing funny?" His fist was raised, ready to strike when someone grabbed his arm. He looked up. It was the other clothed black African. "Let go of me, you cretin!" He was beyond angry. How dare they steal from the king? The man that had been translating pleaded with him. "Sir, they stole nothing." 3 other miners rushed in to pull Bexley off of the man. "Don't you touch me, you vermin!" He glared at the translator. "Their pockets bulge. Do not tell me they do not steal. And now they laugh. They laugh as they steal from the king." "It's their socks," the translator started. "They took them off in the mine because they got too wet. They've never been in the mine before. That's why they stayed dressed. This is why we were laughing. Check the pockets. It's just socks." Then he spoke a few words to the two men, who emptied their pockets. It was indeed socks. Humiliated, Bexley broke himself from the hold the miners had him in, and without another word, he stormed off, leaving the mine unguarded. Thompson's look was calm and collected. He was not angry. This was something Giles did not expect. Usually, when there's a confrontation, those in command lose their cool. But not Thompson. Even this did not raise his temperature. "So let me see if I have this correct. You stopped 2 miners on their way out of the mine under suspicion of theft," Thompson asked. Bexley told himself not to be defiant. This was not the time. "Yes, sir." "There's nothing inherently wrong in that. What happened next?" He considered his answer carefully. "They would not answer when I inquired about why their pockets were bulging out. It looked like contraband to me, sir." "Right. And why did they not answer? Were they being insubordinate?" He wanted to say yes, they were insubordinate, but he knew that Thompson would ask other miners, if he had not already. He decided to be honest. "It turns out they do not speak the king's English, sir. But the man behind them translated my questions, and the 3 of them laughed at me." "Understood. Is that when you unsheathed your service weapon?" Thompson asked, not looking up from the notepad he was writing on. "No, sir. I already had it out when I confronted them." Thompson put his pen down and looked up at him. He had his full attention now. "Why would you have your weapon out before any escalation? Did you wish to scare them?" "Yes, sir. I believe that was the best way to retrieve stolen material." "Then you hit one of the men and took him to the ground." "Yes, sir." He knew there was no denying that. Too many people saw what happened, and Thompson would believe many eyes over him, even if those eyes were attached to the low-life miners. Those men were new. They removed their socks and put them in their pockets. Thompson sat back in his chair, not taking his eyes off of Giles. "I'll be honest with you, Bexley. This is not the first time you've let your temper get the best of you." "Understood, sir, and I'm sorry." "What you do not know is that Colonel Bean was a witness to this altercation. He had come to inspect the guardhouse as you walked away." "Colonel Bean, sir?" "He came to me immediately after and explained the situation. He felt you handled the situation well, even though I tend to disagree." He paused for a moment to let his words sink in. "He was not keen on you abandoning your position, however." Giles Bexley shifted uncomfortably on his feet now, his mind moving a million different directions. What would happen now? "What next, sir?" Bexley asked. "He liked your fighting spirit. He's being transferred to the 3rd Infantry, somewhere in Belgium. He's taking you with him." "I'm going to the front?" "That's what it looks like. I hate to lose you. You were an effective guard, not counting today's outburst." Giles felt that Thompson had to be lying. This was the man he had once put into the infirmary and ended his chances at actually fighting the Germans. There was no chance he was actually liked by Thompson, but he played the game as well as anyone. "You were a great commanding officer, sir," Bexley returned. "Thank you, Bexley. You're dismissed." Giles turned to leave, but a question rose within him that he felt he must ask. "Thompson," he said, turning back around. "Yes?" "Why are you being this cordial to me? We both know you do not like me, not after what I did. What happened to that brash, egotistical man-child we all met in training?" "Bexley, you weren't the only person that wanted to harm me then. In fact, when I look back on how I was, I'm actually surprised it took as long as it did." He chuckled at this and shook his head. "But I tell you, when you get the absolute snot beat out of you and people cheer about it, you tend to take inventory and make changes. But you're right, I do not like you. You're a violent person who seems to look down on everyone who is not like you. You're full of hate, and I've never seen you take full responsibility for anything. But you're no longer my problem. Now get out of my office." Giles did what he was told. The air was bitterly cold, so cold that by mid-afternoon the early morning frost had not melted away. In fact, the clouds above looked as if snow could dump on them any minute. He had been here 3 months now, and one thing he realized about Belgium, if it was not raining, it was snowing. Sunny days, acceptable days, were few and far between. He had gone over the top 3 times in the last 3 months. Each time was more invigorating than the last. The adrenaline rush he felt was unlike anything that he had ever felt before, and he wanted to keep feeling it. The last time was just 2 days ago when they overcame the German army and took over the position they currently held and resided in. He had bayoneted a German in the throat, almost decapitating the man. Or was it a kid? He really did not care. He had started a new ritual that day. He took a trophy, the boy's left ear. He sat on the hard, frosted-over ground and stared at it now. A voice from nearby startled him. "What the hell is that?" He glanced over to see Private Collins, a young lad from Cornwall that he had begrudgingly befriended over the last few days. Friendships at the front aren't meant to last very long. "What does it look like, Collins?" "Looks like an ear." "Well, then, I guess it's an ear now, isn't it? Took it off a German the other day when we took this trench. From here on out, whenever I have the chance, when I kill a German up close and personal, I'm taking his ear." Collins sat down next to him and offered him a piece of salt pork, which Bexley gratefully took. They sat in silence, eating and waiting. That's all war really was, actually. Waiting and more waiting, then fighting, then more waiting. "They say we're getting relieved this evening. You believe 'em, Bex?" "They've never lied about that before," he said sarcastically, then smiled over at Collins. "I'll believe it when it happens." "Same," added Collins after a moment, and the 2 men returned to silence. They listened to orders being given from somewhere down the line. Shells bursting as they flew towards the German position, the occasional shot of a sniper's rifle. They listened to the sounds of war. I don't think I'll ever get used to this, Collins said quietly. Get used to what? Giles asked. All the gunfire, the bombs. He paused a moment and then added, the death. I love it out here, is all Bexley could add. A commotion erupted from further down the trench line which caught their attention. The two men stood and focused on what was happening. That's our relief, I bet, Collins said excitedly. Then he scurried off, leaving Bexley alone, in a section of the trench that was far removed from anyone else. He sat back down and waited. He did not care to be first in line to walk out of the front lines. He would rather be dead last. In fact, maybe they would not even notice if he just stayed. He was not sure how long he had sat there when he heard voices approaching him. It was the men attached to those voices that made his hair stand on end and his face take on its signature scowl. They all spoke with an American accent. He already hated that. But even worse, they were black. There were 4 of them, with clean uniforms, undented helmets, and unfired guns. Cannon fodder, he thought to himself, and good riddance. The man in the lead was too jovial for his taste, too. He stood up to leave. He sure was not going to stay here with these men. They were beneath him, and he was not stooping to that. Not now, not ever. Even though black men were the catalyst for what brought him here, he still held a disdain for them. Hey, how you doing? Name's Marvin. Yours? The lead man asked him. My name is none of your business. You don't need to talk to me. Oh, he's a Brit, another of the men noted. What's London like? A third man chimed in. London is soft from what I hear, not like Philly and New York. Against his better judgment, he took the bait. If you think that any city in the United States is tougher than London, then I've got news for you, lads. Oh yeah, so tough, Marvin said. What you all eat over there? Baked beans? Scones? Real tough. All 4 of them laughed and pointed out other British foods. Of course, they did not mention any American foods that were better, and Giles had no idea how food translated to toughness anyways. The 4th man in their little menagerie finally chimed in. I'll take cornbread over scones any day. What kind of name is Scones? Sounds so weird. Again, the men laughed. Giles hated to be laughed at and made fun of, and these 4 men were now coming at him hard. Marvin must have seen the anger appear, for he attempted to diffuse it. Man, we're just joking around with you. Like I said, I'm Marvin from New York. They call us Harlem Hellfighters, even though Jeremiah over there is from Philly, but we don't hold that against him. Marvin held out his hand. Bexley looked at it in disgust. I'm not shaking the hand of some damn monkey. What did you say? Did you say monkey? Asked the man he now knew as Jeremiah from Philly. You don't want to use that language. You really don't. You see, where we come from, we aren't just ready to throw down with you whites. We have to. Don't make me thrash you, boy. He had spoke without thinking. This time, it was one of the other unnamed men that approached. You're gonna what? Thrash the 4 of us? I highly doubt that. But let's say that somehow you're able to get the drop on all 4 of us. What will that prove? Giles instantly got closer to the man, almost nose to nose. It will prove what I already know, that you are inferior to me, inferior to white men. I already had to thrash some of you down in Africa. Maybe we can send you down there to be with the rest of your monkey friends. Then he felt something, like a push to his abdomen. He looked down. He saw the blood before he felt the pain. When he looked up, one of the unnamed soldiers was wiping off his bayonet. He dropped to his knees, the blood rushing from his gut. His eyes watered and blurred as he watched them scurry away down the trench lines, leaving him alone in his favorite isolated spot. He found the strength to say one word, Mommy. Then his world went black. You've been listening to World War I Stories, Tales Beyond the Trenches. If this episode stayed with you, if it stirred something quiet or left you in stillness, share it, follow the show, leave a rating, help keep these stories alive. Our first collection now lives on Kindle. Search World War I Stories Tales Beyond the Trenches Volume 1 in your Kindle app and carry these echoes with you. For glimpses behind the curtain and stories between the stories, join me on Instagram at WWIPod_HennyB. And if you'd like to see your name in the credits, become a producer. Visit our Patreon at patreon.com/World War I Stories and help power the next tale into existence. Thank you for walking back in time with me.